Gaza civilians are begging Israel to come and take down Hamas. And meanwhile, in New York, the city is about to elect a socialist, pro-intifada potential mayor. What's going on? Why is the world embracing this terrible Jew-hating rhetoric while the people of Gaza are dying and begging for a change? Well, we're going to be unpacking a lot of this and more on The Quad. Welcome back, everybody, to The Quad. And this week, we're all in different places, but we didn't want to miss you. And so, coming to you remote, we're here like we are every week. And what is going on this week? It's the tale of two wars, the war the world perceives and what's really going on in Gaza. Take a look at this.
هذا السلاح اللي مسكيته حماس وبيطلعوا مظاهرات فيه وببينوا عضلاتهم. هنا إلهم هم اللي حصلحهم وعشان إنه يسيطروا على الشعب ويسيطروا علينا إنه يظلوا هم حاكميننا، لكن الله لا يقدر، الله لا يقولها ربنا يحكمونا. يا رب، أنا بطلب من الله إذا بدهم هم يسيطروا علينا بسلاحهم وحالهم ويظلوا، يا رب إسرائيل يظلوا.
فيش أخضر من اليوم، فيش أخضر.
لازم يكون في هناك ثورة من داخل قطاع غزة ضد هدول الناس وأشبه بعصيان وأشبه بثورة ضدهم بشكل كبير جدا لحد ما نقدر إحنا نوصلهم لمرحلة إنه لازم إحنا يعني نخلص منكم. أنتوا جماعة مرفوضين، حماس برا.
So, ladies, once again, here we are trying to tell the world what's actually going on, trying to tell the morons, for lack of a better word, around the world who are still somehow talking about freeing Palestine, not really helping them free themselves from Hamas at all. I'm here in New York, Emily's in the States, and what we see all around us is the tale of two wars. Nobody really knows what's going on the ground, and yet they've built themselves a completely different narrative that doesn't exist here. A narrative that may help Zoran Mandani, an unqualified, there's many things we can say about Mandani, but inauthentic, unqualified, fake guy with a permanent fake smile on his face. The guy might get elected tomorrow. And part of the reason would be is because people have swallowed lock, stock, and barrel the tale of a war that didn't happen. So let's unpack this together. Emily, you are also in this part of the pond. Tell us a little bit about what you are seeing.
Yeah, well, Fleur, I mean, as you know, you're in New York now. I've been in New York all week. It's incredibly bewildering to me that so many people seem to embrace this person. And, everybody's talking about Israel as if Israel is the main issue in the U.S., not just on the Mamdani issue, but also on other issues as well, which I'll get to in a second. And it's so, it just doesn't make sense to me because there's no reason that all these Americans should be focused on, a tiny country across the world that they're not a part of, unless you have a problem with Jews.
Exactly.
And this is what we keep coming back to over and over and over again from the left and the right. I mean, Mamdani, you mentioned his gross fake smile, which of course is obnoxious, but if only that was the only problem that he had. I mean,
we could handle
the guy's
that.
a communist.
Yes.
He's a true believing self-declared socialist, although really I would say that he's a communist in what he's advocating. He's advocated to defund the police. He wants to repeatedly, he wants to cut funding for counterterrorism in the city of New York. He also has made all kinds of offensive comments about 9/11 and other terrorist incidents. And he said he would arrest the Israeli prime minister, which is a violation of American law. America is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, so enforcing the ICC arrest warrant makes no sense in the United States of America and is a violation of federal law. He has zero authority to do that. Although I kind of would like to see him try to get NYPD to get through Netanyahu's security. Good luck with that. But he's hugely problematic, and a lot of his rhetoric is very, very anti-Semitic explicitly. A video went viral this week of him saying that whatever the NYPD does. It's done with, the boot is laced with the IDF, which of course is anti Semitic rhetoric. It's the same sort of conspiratorial content that we've seen for the past 2 years straight, again, from the left and the right.
We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
And then, we have this horrible situation in New York with the election. We also have a fight on the right. We have the ongoing conflict over Tucker Carlson's and Candace Owens and all of these crazy people on the far right or alt right, whatever you want to call it, woke right, who continue to act as if Israel is the core issue for Americans when it's simply not the case.
Well,
And then we
well, they've
saw
made it. They've made it the core issue. They've made it the core issue because it serves them politically. Because there's a surge of anti-Israel again, mainly because of the way the war has been presented. Or,
right.
let's be honest, because the war has been presented. Look what's going on in Sudan, for God's sake. There's slews of people getting slain and slaughtered.
Nigeria.
Nothing to see here. It just beggars belief. The whole thing has been orchestrated around the Hamas war, the Israel war with all our enemies, I think for very, very deliberate reasons. Shoshana,
Well, they have nothing else to talk about,
what do you mean?
right? Meaning that is, if you put your position forward about Israel, then you are you're positioning yourself as the just guy, the righteous man. He doesn't have to actually deal with, how are you going to fund those buses, Mamdani? How are you going to bring down rent? How are you going, you're going to take away, let me tell you, the people fighting crime, you're going to take money away from them and you're going to put it in the buses, but you're not going to put people in jail. So the buses are going to become absolute nightmares for regular tax-paying people. If you don't talk about actually how you're going to get things done, so then you could just talk about anything. And if you talk about Israel, so then, you get people on the streets for you. But New York City is an incredible city. It's international. It has so many. I love New York. It's so full of different types of people who get along because they're New Yorkers. And here comes this guy. Who do you think you are coming into New York? Who do you think you are stirring up the pot and telling people that you're going to defund this and you're going to do that and you're going to free buses? And the Aza Jews that are standing there saying, as a Jew, I believe in Mamdani. Girl, what is wrong with you?
They're nuts.
I don't know.
Chickens for KFC. It's the same as
People
the
have
kids.
lost their minds. I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I really believe New Yorkers are going to come through and this guy's not going to get elected. On the other hand, I'm like, all right, let's see what's going to happen. Get that guy in office and see how long it takes.
I agree. Bellamy, you were a New Yorker until a few months ago when you swapped New York for Jerusalem. Some people would think you're nuts just for that reason. But Bellamy, you also, been around this crazy kind of progressive community. And I'm trying to understand what the appeal of this man is. And people tell me, no, Fleur, New York has become so unaffordable and they're fed up with the old, the old guard, the old white man. Maybe that's why. Bellamy, you straddle those two worlds, the world of the progressives with your dancing career and sanity, Bellamy, and sanity.
Yes.
How do you see it when you were in New York? How do people try to convince you that this was a good idea?
It's never going to convince me that that's a good idea, because I go back to a year ago when we had the actual presidential election, and what I had to go through with how people were coming at me, and especially the as a Jews saying, but why would you vote for somebody like this? Why would you vote for somebody like this? Who is there to actually take office and be in a place where we can say, okay, out of all evils, I trust this person first. But now coming into something that's, as a New Yorker from before, I moved to New York and I was still at the end of my teenage years. And what I've seen change in such a very short space of time, but very radically, has been terrifying. It's all about how charismatic he is. And he's brown. I'm sorry, I'm going to say what other people are too terrified to say. He's brown and he's a man. And the issue of race that always comes into play when it comes to American politics is playing itself out right now. And as a South African, I want to say this. This is something that keeps being left out. He's not just from Uganda. He also spent years during his formative years in Cape Town, South Africa. So what we're missing out in this whole conversation that's being wiped out from every single direction is the ties in which he has with South Africa. What did he learn in South Africa? What is the verbiage that he got already within tying into who he is right now? He is one of the most incredible shapeshifters, I have to say, in the face of this earth. And everything that we always get called for as Jews, but not just as Jews, but who Israel is deemed to the world, is exactly everything that he is. He is the epitome of the number one person. If you had to go to central casting and say who would be the perfect person to sell, that is your person. And this whole thing of the AOCs of eat the rich and everything, he's the perfect salesman for that. He is suited up. He's got the perfect accent depending on which room he's in and who
Yeah,
he's around.
good
He will
point.
say the exact right thing. It doesn't matter what it is. The poster child for Takia right there. And everybody is so blinded by it. It's the exact same thing that happened when Barack Obama ran. And I will call him Hussein Obama because that is his name. And then we trickle down and we look at everything that happened within that everybody tried to hide. It's all about charisma. It's all about the change, but it's coming from somebody that is extremely wealthy. The
Yeah,
1% that is
Melvin.
now absolutely convincing people that I see you. I may look like you, but I don't know. He doesn't know anything about what it is like to be a struggling New Yorker. The same thing with the kids in all of these Ivy League schools that want to be grunge and grow their armpit hairs and scream from the rooftops about how they really understand what it is like to be a minority, to be an artist, and to be a struggling New Yorker. They are just scripted and they picked the right person for the job. And the danger in which New York faces right now is that if he's elected tomorrow, New York will never look the same again.
You think so? You're not exaggerating? Because a lot of people say to me, there's a governor and there's a city council. He won't be able to do just what the hell he wants. There's a county. There's lots of layers of government in America. And it's not like he can do anything else. What scares me is that you have here the center of global capitalism, the engine of finance of the world. And you're going to have a communist running the engine of global finance? And just getting back to the whole context of Gaza and what's going on right now in Sudan, for example, where there's literally no coverage, no coverage. Maybe you've seen a little bit more than me. I've seen very little coverage here about the massacres and the real genocide going on in Sudan. And it seems like this whole Gaza thing came around at just the right time for these people to get elected. It seems almost like you said, Bellamy, scripted. Emily, do you agree?
No, I agree with everything that Bellamy just said. I think it's a very precarious situation. But I actually wanted to add one more example of a policy that Mamdani has advocated that is incredibly dangerous and antithetical to everything I've ever known, whether on the left or right, about American values, and that is that he said he was going to shut down the Technion's campus on
Oh,
in New York City, the partnership that they have with Technion University. Now, Technion is one of the best universities in the world. It's
yep.
an incubator for the highest, most successful levels and most creative innovations that exist that have saved countless lives around the world that continue to develop such technologies in that sphere. And the partnership with New York is critical to the success of both sides, frankly. And anyone who is advocating to cut off academic relations is acting against academic freedom. And I don't think that there's any single example that epitomizes the totalitarian ideology that Mamdani has more so than shutting down academic exchange of ideas, shutting down dialogue, silencing people. That is communism. That is what he believes in. That is what he stands for. And his calls and promises to shut down the Technion campus and to harm the academic freedom of these partnerships is a prime example of what he stands for, and it's only the beginning.
He's
He will do
telling us
much worse if given the opportunity.
he's telling everybody what he stands for. He's not hiding anything. Everybody knows very clearly what he stands for. He's telling everybody to their face. Maybe he's exaggerating on some things, but we can't take that risk. And it's
Can you imagine if he had been mayor when we had those riots, basically, all across the campuses in Manhattan? They were bad enough. But if he had been mayor, or if they do this again when he is mayor, the chaos that we saw,
yeah.
that was it would be 10, 20, 30 times worse because he would be encouraging it. He would be leading it. And the chaos that led to janitors being actually harmed,
Yes.
school workers being harmed, is something that he should be, a mayor is supposed to be calming and bring control. He would be out there stirring the pot. And that's not what New York needs. I know that, like, Washington is the capital, right, of the United States, but New York is the heart.
Yeah.
And the idea, people have to understand what happens in New York is it does have a big, massive impact on the rest of the United States. And it is a big deal to be the mayor of New York City. Even if it's just a 5 borough city, it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge deal. And
And Shoshana, by the way, you brought up the janitors that were injured. I just want to note, in case anyone viewing doesn't know, we're talking about a black and a brown,
yeah,
Latino janitor staff or administrative staff
Custodial
who were
staff.
working at Columbia University that were physically assaulted and injured by the anti-Israel protesters after being effectively for several hours taken hostage inside one of the buildings that they took over. I mean, it's unbelievable the level of hypocrisy. And then that goes back to what Bellamy mentioned, that people are looking at him, oh, he's brown.
yeah.
He's brown, and it's all about race relations. Meanwhile, the actual working class people, not the spoiled brats who go to Columbia and pay $60,000 a year for their tuition, but the people who are actually working to make a living for their families are the people who are going to be hurt by these policies. And that's always what happens when you have these kinds of ideologies on the left. And it's not that I'm so much on the right, I just don't like the left.
It's just, but also there's so many people that are just speaking out, born and bred New Yorkers, and literally sounding the alarm of the danger that will ensue as soon as this man becomes mayor. I mean, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but you have people that are born and raised there that have seen New York change decade after decade after decade, and this is their last straw of saying, we can barely afford to live as it is. We can barely afford to feed our families, whatever. But the structure in which this man wants to usher in, it might not, people might call it dramatic or whatever, but it's a very large door in which he is going to open as a portal to let everything wrong happen in a very short space of time.
I'm trying to stay hopeful that, you know how nobody admitted they were voting for Trump, and so the polls could never predict his win the first time around, and then the win was very obvious. Maybe people don't want to admit they're voting for Cuomo for whatever his reasons. I'm just praying that
Yeah.
it's closer than people think. And I'm now convinced that Curtis Sliwa must have done a deal with Mandani. Why on earth else would he not just drop out and give Cuomo the win? Why is he is a Republican. He knows Mandani is going to be a lot worse than Cuomo. I'm beginning to wonder whether there's a deal here. I mean, I've experienced the most horrible deals being done in politics. There's no values anymore. I just experienced the world's Zionist Congress where left and nobody cares about left and right. It's all about interest and who's getting what. I saw it up close last week, I can tell you. So nothing would surprise me if I heard, oh, Curtis Lewa is now going to be the head of I don't know what. Mandani made a deal with him, and this is why he's not dropping out, to make sure Mandani wins. I don't know, but I don't understand why somebody who obviously is going to lose is going.
What I read about it is that it's related to his campaign funding, and that if he drops out early, like some of the funding that he had received, he
But
wouldn't
it's
be
the day
eligible to
before.
keep.
It's the
I
day
know.
before. It's not early
I know.
anymore.
I think it's personal. I think it's personal interest. I'm not sure if he made any kind of deal with Mamdani, but I think even aside from that, related to the campaign, it was about personal interests or finances or something like that. But I have to say, even his comments have been despicable. He himself is problematic, and which gets into the issue on the right. I mean, we saw this week Heritage Foundation
Yeah.
basically defending Tucker Carlson. And the thing is it's not the majority opinion, the Tucker Carlsons or the Mamdanis. They're not the majority of the left, and they're not the majority of the right.
That's
The
right.
problem is that the left has done nothing to kick these people out of their party, and it's completely destroyed the left, and now it's destroying the right because the right is unwilling to kick these people out of their party. We see time and time again major voices in the Republican Party defending or making excuses for people like Tucker Carlson, who are literally enabling Nazis like Nick Fuentes. I mean, it's appalling. There's just no excuse.
It's almost like, how low is it going to go? Bellamy, you were going to say something about.
I was gonna say that. Well, what's What I tend to see a lot with what's going on is I remember when Mayor Adams was in office, and I made fun of him the whole time because I thought that he would attend the opening of an envelope if there was a DJ and an open bar, because that was the whole of his tenure. So now you're seeing somebody on his campaign trail doing the exact same thing, and the same people that called Eric Adams out for doing that are gleefully supporting Mamdani. So, besides hypocrisy, just seeing how people are so easily sold on anything at all. But besides what policy actually matters, everything has become so emotional. The country is so mad that Trump became president, that the same people that are driven by the anger, it's almost like a got you. I will vote for him just to prove a
Well,
point.
this is what my friend Miriam was saying, that essentially it's a vote against Trump. And this is why many people are voting for Mandani.
Absolutely.
They're
And,
gonna-
and I have to say, like, there's no moderates. Like, we have this. Where are the moderate? Where are the good candidates? Like, where are the people who stand up for American values, who stand up for the people without being a lunatic? Where are those people? Why are they not in the running? It's it's not it's not just one place. Like, even in the presidential elections, like, where are the people who are properly representing Americans the way they deserve to be represented? I don't know.
well, I
There's a shut off thing that I think definitely happened, especially leading up to the last elections, those last 4 years. Everything was run on one thing, on an extremity from one side to the other, and it was a trans issue. So if you shove something down one side's long enough to exhaust them, the other side is going to counter it by making sure that they can get rid of everything that you are actually about, because no one really wants to hear about it anymore. And it's the same thing that I'm noticing now with this the mayoral election, is that everybody is so sick and tired of saying, well, this is actually how things go. I don't understand how you expect to live in New York City and not pay rent. I'm sorry. Even the rats at some point must have a taxation system somewhere, because everyone's paying rent. It's expensive to live there throughout. But then you also have people everywhere lying about exactly who has gotten rid of the SNAP benefits and frozen the EBT benefits and everything else. It's all being pushed to say that the right did this, the right did this. Meanwhile, the left is just shuffling on the side, tap dancing, going, actually, we did this. But if we just keep pointing the finger this way, nobody will know. We
Well,
know.
I joked about a week ago that this is the only time that the Democrats have actually agreed to massively cut spending, especially with any kind of entitlement. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess the times really are changing.
They are changing.
But that's what it is, isn't it? It's like we're all living in these echo chambers of our own news, of our own opinions. And there's no objective journalism anymore, certainly not in the mainstream media. And this is how Israel also has gotten villainized over the last 2 years. You know, famine, 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 famine. Oh, now there's a UN report. Oh, guess what? There was no famine. Genocide, 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 genocide. Oh, actually, the numbers were even better than what we were talking about over the last 2 years in terms of, innocent to combatant ratio. But it doesn't matter anymore because it's all out there and the truth has absolutely no bearing on anything anymore. We're living in a post-truth era.
But can I just add something to that, Fleur? Because I remember when I was growing up, and just before I left in 2008, I keep speaking about just how xenophobic South Africa is. So now you have 54 countries, and the number one democratic country, the rainbow nation of the whole continent, has shut its doors to Africans. They will come into Africans who are refugees, burn their homes down, and make sure that they will shoo them away. And this was back in 2008. I was 17 years old before moving to the United States of America. So right now, when I look at what's going on between Nigeria, the Christians that are being massacred, South Africa can't stand Nigerians. They want to get rid of them. They call them that slang word, gwere gwere, which means foreigner. And you have refugees that basically are being told to go and cry everywhere else. The West is now having to say there's a problem happening here. And the only reason why I started to see that anybody in the mainstream media was saying something is because Jews and Israel was saying, hi, you want to talk about a genocide? This is actually what's going on. Because it took days and days and days before I saw anything in the mainstream media in the West say, actually, this is going on. They keep saying, this is going on. This has been going on. But you are so focused
Yeah.
on nothing else but Israel. You are so focused because a country that is shutting out 53 other countries instead of welcoming in refugees and giving them solutions as the democratic beacon of all of Africa is too focused on taking Israel to court for something that is non-existent and apartheid when they can't even explain what xenophobia is besides living it.
You know, it's just so depressing that it feels like, I'm reading this book on the history of the Jews, and it's just like, I feel like we've been in this rodeo so many times. And it doesn't, the thing that people don't seem to understand is it doesn't end well either for the countries that turn away, bully, harass, and discriminate against the Jews. So whether it's the Democratic Party or whether it's the far right on the Republican Party, the United States, or any other place in Europe, you come after us. Eventually, that is when your society starts going to in the toilet. Do- Am I wrong?
I
Yeah.
mean, look at what happened in Syria. Look at what happened in Iraq. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you're Mizrahi, Blair. You know this better than anyone, the way that these countries have completely self-destructed. And it all started with the persecution slash expulsion or otherwise oppression of the Jewish community, because it never, ever ends with the Jewish community. And that's what's so important to know about the entire situation with Bamzani and why I brought up the academic freedom issue, because when you start shutting down the exchange of ideas and you
Yeah.
start silencing people, and I don't mean criticizing someone, because that is not silencing, contrary to what some of the alt-right would say about Tucker Carlson. Criticism is welcome. Conversations about what's happening is welcome. But when you're actually shutting down dialogue, when you're actually preventing people from being able to talk, your own society suffers. And that's what we're seeing. That's the beginnings of what we're seeing. And instead of being aware of this, as you are mentioning, Bellamy, and looking at the examples of where we've been here in history, and I don't just mean we as a Jewish community, I mean we as a global community,
Yeah.
we're going to repeat the same things. It's craziness.
Craziness is certainly what it is, but it wouldn't be the Quad if we didn't go into the very crazies and the big scumbags. So, our section, Scumbag of the Week. Why don't you kick us off, Emily? Who's your scumbag this week?
Oh, well, I'm kind of sorry to say it, but my scumbag this week is JD Vance, the vice president of the US. Now, while I admit that Trump has been a pretty good president on Israel, he has a long track record of positive pro Israel steps, and he has done a lot for Israel. First and foremost, I would say the hostage deal. That, of course, comes with strings attached. And unfortunately, he's dealing with a bit of a conflict within his own movement in the United States because of people like JD Vance. JD Vance took to campus to speak to some of the students from the MAGA, Make America Great Again movement, to answer questions about what's happening in America in the tradition of Charlie Kirk, or that was at least what he was trying to do. Take a look at what happened.
I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-hundred-billion-dollar foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the President of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the President of the United States, they're not controlling this President of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East.
So, as you see here, JD Vance failed to shut down a clearly anti-Semitic loaded question that sought to blame Israel/Jews for the persecution of Christians and a host of other things. And instead of shutting that down unequivocally, JD Vance kind of flirted around the issue as he has done before, it implied that Israel somehow has this manipulative control over previous presidents, but not this one. Like, what
Exactly.
are you even talking about? I mean, this is clearly even what the vice president himself, is alluding to is relying on anti-Semitic tropes.
Exactly.
And like, to be this unaware in the situation that we're in today is just wildly irresponsible. I mean, I know he's trying to quell the far right masses, the Nick Fuentes neo-Nazi types that have inserted themselves in the Republican Party. But there's no excuse for this kind of behavior. We need leadership that is going to shut down this kind of inaccurate, based hate speech that we see from these extremists, and they are extremists. And instead of doing that, he's spreading conspiracies about the state of Israel. And I'm just profoundly disappointed to see him time after time give leverage to these kinds of people. And, JD Vance has been incredibly naive on foreign policy for a long time. I've never supported him. He spoke at Trita Parsi, who's the mouthpiece of the Islamic Republic of Iran, at his institute, Quincy Institute, before. And although his comments themselves were okay, constantly you see him sort of aligning himself with this extremist movement on the right. Not acceptable. Should never have happened. And yes, he, like Megyn Kelly, who refuses to condemn Tucker Carlson, like anybody else who's supporting him, like Candace Owens, like Tucker Carlson himself, needs to be condemned for his failure to stand up for the most basic example of what's right.
Absolutely. Silence is complicit. And, it just shows how, I have to return to this. We have to show how wonderful Charlie Kirk was. Because it's not that Charlie Kirk didn't have his criticisms towards Israel, but he would have shut that down. They can't hold a candle to the way that Charlie Kirk used to handle these situations. Because again and again, if he had that, he would say, hang on a minute, this, and maybe they did this wrong. It was very, very different. And all we've seen is that I'm just a little concerned about the direction of Turning Point, except that this week, Erica Kirk, thankfully, has accepted a prize given to her by the Christian Broadcasting Convention that is happening in Jerusalem. So hopefully, Turning Point will stay sane and won't be infected by the virus that Tucker Carlson wants to infect it with.
Actually, just this morning, Turning Point USA CEO said that she wasn't coming to Israel to accept this award and that they had never heard of that.
Oh.
And they also announced that JD Vance, along with Tucker Carlson and Erica Kirk, will be speaking at one of, Turning Point USA's major events in, I believe it's this month or next month. So, I mean, listen, I think Charlie was great, and what he advocated in terms of dialogue is important. But what Turning Point USA is doing now, and actually before Charlie's passing, I condemned him for welcoming Tucker Carlson, and I do it again, because there should be no place for someone who is advocating for a socialist regime in Venezuela, who is shilling for Putin in Russia, who wants to, reinstitute the USSR and take over other independent sovereign territories. Ukraine is only the beginning. And, who
taking checks
bashes
from
Christian
Qatar.
Zionists.
And taking checks
Uh,
from Qatar.
Exactly.
Last
Taking
increase
checks,
in China.
defending
He's a step
Qatar.
away from North Korea.
He's not conservative. He's not conservative,
No.
and he's not right wing. So this inability to put your foot down and say he has no place in this movement it's despicable.
By the way, which is what they always accused the Democrats of. They said the Democrats
right.
did not get rid of anti-Semitism in their party. They let it flourish. And here we have it. And it feels like it's happened so fast. I mean, I know it's been brewing, but the last 2 weeks have been like whoosh. Anyway, God help us. Bellamy, who's your scumbag this week?
My scumbag of this week needs to pack up her knives and stop speaking. Padma Lakshmi. Not just is the father of her daughter a Jewish man, but also her ex-husband was stabbed multiple times after speaking out. And I think the name of his book was the lies of Satan. I'm paraphrasing that right now, but he spoke out against the Muslim jihad extremists, basically. And she went and took to social media this week to aunt wash. That's what I'm calling it. She aunt washed because I mean, we as Indians of so many millions understand that we call everybody an extension to
Auntie.
our
We call
family, an
everybody out.
auntie and an
No?
uncle. And I'm so happy that right now my daughter can have somebody to look up to. And in the background, you hear the daughter saying, Mom, Donnie is so hot. I'm sorry, what?
At least he's honest. At least he wants to do well for all New Yorkers. At least he's not a crook or somebody who sexually harasses people. And in this day and age, as a parent, it's getting really hard to teach your children about honesty and integrity and being a true upstanding leader, because many of our leaders are hardly honest or upstanding. So actually, as a parent, I'm glad that there's somebody that I can point to that at least has their heart in the right place. Okay, Krishna, there you go.
I mean, chapter after chapter after chapter of your own life, you are now taking a stand to say, again, because he's brown, represents everything about how charismatic he is and whatever, that it completely wipes out the reality of what she, first of all, produced a child with a Jewish man. So I don't care about the lineage of who's what and what. The father of your child is a Jewish man, and you are looking to usher in this kind of communist, anti-Jewish rhetoric all the way, literally all the way to the podium, champion it, medal it, congratulate it, and give it the keys to New York City openly. And I think when somebody has 2 million followers just on one platform on social media, but she's got way more just on one platform on social media, the responsibility that falls upon these people is completely missed, because they end up in this sort of ecosystem of being so removed from reality and from real people, because every 2 seconds they're behind a camera. They've got all these people that traipse behind them and tell them, you sneeze in this direction, everything is fine. Chop in this direction, everything is great. The check clears. They live in a completely different universe. But these are the people that are influential enough to Joe Schmo that's going to go, I don't know what to do the following day. I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. But Padma, I like the vindaloo she made last week, so I'm definitely going to go listen to what she has to say about anything political, because how it's going to affect Joe Schmo is not really going to touch Padma at all.
That's a good point. Actually, that's a good point. That's what why this is an elitist
Yes.
campaign rather than the other way around, and that's why it's so disingenuous. Padma Lakshmi, yes, shame. What could we do? Shoshana.
So if you thought that the New York elections was about Palestine, and if you thought that New York universities or London universities was about Palestine, wait till you hear this, because my scumbag of the week has taken himself to a refugee camp in Sudan. Yes, a refugee camp in Sudan, and is teaching the children living in tents in Sudan that they should feel bad for the Palestinians, using their own fate, the tragedy that has befallen them, to say why they should feel bad for the people in Gaza. Take a look.
هي في دولة اسمها فلسطين. حلو؟ يعني خليكم تتخيلوا كيف بدي لكم. تخيلوا اني انتم عندكم هيدي الخيمة. بيوم من الايام اجى حدا دق الباب وقال لكم بدي افوت اشرب عندكم شاي او ابرك شوي. منيح؟ بعد ما فات برك صار يعتبر اني هذا البيت بيته، ويقول لكم هيدي الخيمة خيمتي، ويصير يطالعكم منها. وانتم بتقولوا له طب احنا بس فوتناك حتى تفوت تشرب شيء وتطلع، هي خيمة خيمتنا. بتصيروا شو بتعملوا انتم؟ بتقولوا له اطلع. وبس لاني قلتوا له اطلع من الخيمة بصير العالم كله بيحاربكم. وهيك عم بيصير بفلسطين وهيك عم بيصير بغزة. حاليا محاصرة من الجميع ولا بيقدروا بياكلوا ولا بيقدروا بيشربوا.
You know, there's a lot that we've seen in the past 2 years that have maybe made our jaws drop. But I'm watching this video, and granted, it's translated, but I'm watching this video and I'm just like, how depraved,
Those poor kids.
how depraved do you have to be to look at a child living in a tent in a war-torn, famine-ridden country?
Real
And
famine.
say,
Real
but
famine.
please feel bad for the Palestinians. How disgusting not to see the person in front of the child in front of you. Anyway, he wins the award this week and for many, many weeks.
Yes, that's pretty disgusting. I'm assuming it's from one of these non-profits that feed on Jewish hatred and Qatari money. But anyway, maybe not. But the point is that this is also what's befallen on the humanitarian aid community, that they all have the same brainwashed, mind. And there are no bigger
Must
victims
talk
in this world.
Palestine.
Even people being killed, no bigger victims, of course, than the Palestinians in Gaza who elected their own terrorist organization. Nothing about that. Disgusting. I feel so bad for these kids. Disgusting.
Horrible.
So, bringing it a little to the mundane, because this guy is super mundane. His name is Miguel Adrover. He is the designer. He's a clothes designer, and he is the designer who refused to dress a Spanish singer Rosalia because she'd been silenced. She was silent on the Palestinians. She wasn't pro-Palestinian enough, and so he refused to dress her. But why is he my scumbag this week? Because otherwise he wouldn't be important enough to even talk about him. Because look at his Halloween costume. Now, this guy dressed up as a bloody, I guess, Israel with blood on its hands. So imagine being in a party and this guy shows up, and this is his Halloween costume, essentially a walking blood libel of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. And I'm pretending obviously to be a Jew, so there's a lot of anti-Semitism just in the way that you're pretending to be a Jew, cultural appropriation, and on top of that, of course, put blood everywhere because that is what the Jew is, a bloodthirsty killer. And this guy gets accepted and dresses up famous people and decides who he will dress according to the purity test of who supports the Palestinians. And so, for all those reasons and more, Miguel Adrover, you are a disgusting, vile scumbag, my scumbag, this week.
I wonder if you could trace his ancestors right to the Inquisition.
That's a good point. Either side, by the way, because there's a lot of people who have so much internalized anti-Semitism. Who the hell knows? All right,
That's
but
going
thank
to
God.
be very unfortunate for him because Rosalia's new album is an absolute hit.
Really, I've just got a feeling
I
she
love her.
said something recently and she kind of caved in the way that Tom York has. I'm praying that's not true, but I think she also said something recently. It's like, honestly,
Yeah,
even
they
if you-
tried to like cancel her because she wouldn't talk about Palestine, and I think she didn't, but she said something like sympathetic and generic, but it wasn't like anti-Israel.
But that
I'm
just
not sure
shows-
what she ended up saying,
but
but
that
yeah,
just shows
there was
the
a bullying
bullying.
campaign against
This
her.
bullying campaign. I think the smartest people are the people not saying anything because you're a Hollywood actress, you're a designer, you're an artist. You are not a geopolitical expert. Why does anybody care what you say? Stay home and shut up, like Ricky Gervais.
Like Taylor Swift.
You know what? She's smart. Sorry, she's smart. Don't say anything. We're not
She
interested.
would cause a firestorm if she said anything.
Absolutely, but she's smart for not saying anything. All right, and we always need our Zen moment of sanity because there are many, many heroes. Emily, who's your hero this week?
So my hero is actually a very sad story, but something I think needs to be highlighted, at least for the English-speaking world that sometimes misses these stories. There's an Iranian activist, a dissident. His name is Omid Salak. He recorded a video of himself actually burning a photo of Khamenei, the Ayatollah, just a few days ago. Within hours, he was arrested by the IRGC, and I believe it was less than 2 days later, they dropped off his dead body at his family home. This is not unusual.
No.
That's the point I want to make. It's tragic and it's awful, but this is not something that's rare. And, I think a lot of people would say, well, then why did he do that if it's so dangerous? Because there are 90 million people who are living as hostages of the Islamic Republic, their own people, and they are desperate for help. And while people in the Trump administration and, of course, on the left continue to ignore the plight of the Iranian people and to say, oh, well, we can just make a business deal and it will be fine, those 90 million people are suffering immensely under the Islamic Republic to the point where many of them, including people whom I know or knew, people who I've interviewed professionally for work, would rather die then continue to live under the Islamic Republic. And that's not how it should be for a country that is as naturally resource rich, as historically rich, as culturally rich as Iran. I mean, it's outrageous that this has continued to happen with the largest economy in the Middle East, single economy in the Middle East as well. So Omid Salak, who sadly was murdered by the IRGC, another victim of the Islamic Republic, is my hero of the week.
Well, he's a hero indeed, Emily, and thank God to you for always highlighting the plight of the Iranians. You are really out there always pushing. And my biggest, really sad, when we were under attack, rocket attack from the Islamic Republic, we all hoped that that would have done it, that that was the step that was needed, that we could have gone a little bit further and let the people take over. And I'm just really sad every day that we didn't finish the job for them to be able to take over their own country. But thank you for highlighting these stories again and again, Emily. Thank you. Shoshana, who's your hero this week?
My heroes go back to our hostage theme. Ronan and Orna Nutra, who are the parents of Omer. Unfortunately, he returned this week. He was one of the bodies that was returned this week from Hamas. But his parents have been advocating for 2 years, eloquently and passionately, for his release, for other hostages to be released, and they're calling out Hamas for playing their games. We find ourselves in this situation of being extraordinarily happy for the people who came home and devastated for those who didn't come home or are coming home, in body bags. And Hamas is still playing games with us.
Yeah.
They're still insisting that they can't find without bulldozers. And they're lying, and we know they're lying. But we're in this position of, I guess, having to play their game or choosing to play their game. Israel's really not, in my opinion, going far enough and bashing Hamas enough as they should. We still have 8 bodies, 8 that are not returned, and they should have been returned. And so I join them in their call for everyone to come home. I join them in their grief, and I thank them for their advocacy and their eloquency, and just being incredible people, and raising a son who actually returned from the States to serve in the IDF. And we're
They're
with you.
amazing people, the Nutras, and they were also pivotal, by the way, in advocating for Idan Alexander to come home. They were there the whole time. They were in touch with the White House the whole time. I've met them a number of times. They're just good people from Long Island whose son was a patriot and he wanted to fight for his country. And, I wrote to a friend of mine was helping them with their campaign. And I said, I hope they get closure. And we knew what the outcome was. We knew that he'd been killed, but it's still so painful anew. You know what I mean? Even though we knew he was coming back dead in a casket, it's just so painful again. It doesn't make it any less painful. You know what I mean?
No, they should only know, happiness,
Amen,
health, and
amen, amen,
peace
amen,
from now
amen.
on.
Thanks, Shoshana. Bellamy, who's your hero this week? Kid?
My hero this week is Melanie Shiraz, who's currently in Thailand representing Israel at the Miss Universe. And I know that it's something that might seem like, it's a pageant and it's less whatever. But even with what we've seen in terms of sports or anything else, representing Israel now comes with a lot. And she doesn't have a whole machine like somebody that's going to Eurovision that's really behind her and really supporting her. She's almost out there alone, but standing very tall in her pride for Israel. And I think right now, even the smallest bit of courage to stand against the massive storm and the wave that the world is pushing, and with this Miss Palestine that was all of a sudden, that came out of nowhere, manufactured out of nowhere else, has never lived anywhere near Palestine or Jordan, besides the UAE and the United States of America. The campaign that was being pushed against Israel with this Miss Palestine bot was something that was pretty strange coming out of nowhere. And I'm a very strong person, but even that would have literally made me take a step back and go, do I actually want to go and do this? And as much as Thailand is a safe place for Jews, there have been so many incidents where I go, are you really a good place for Jews to go? Because one thing spinballing into another can really raise a lot of anxiety and question. And when it comes to beauty pageants, I remember when I was younger, what do you want? World peace. Can we bring back that thing like that happened in the early 90s and the late 80s where every single beauty pageant was all about, Miss So-and-so wanting world peace. Just walk, answer the questions, be intelligent. What do you want to do? What do you want to do as a philanthropist? Are you going to medical school? Are you doing this? As an ambassador, it is so important to have women that are really steadfast and have a very iron spine in saying, I am a proud Israeli and I will represent Israel with all my pride and all my might, no matter what. So she's definitely my hero for this week.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head, Bellamy. She had very little support, actually, from the Israeli government, if any at all. He had to go around garnering support for her to go there. So absolutely, Melody Shiraz, brave woman, wonderful woman. We wish her
Can
luck.
I mention an honorable mention because I completely forgot, but the professor who was trashed for being Jewish and Israeli, and they wanted to
Oh!
behead him, and he was asked do you regret your IDF service? Watch this video.
Where's my camera? There? Okay. Good evening, thugs. It's important to be polite. As you have probably heard, we have compulsory conscription in Israel, so as a citizen, I was obligated to serve. However, for most of us, conscription merely absolved us of the need to volunteer. Personally, I was born less than 20 years after nearly my entire family was gassed at Treblinka. And personally, I would have crawled over cut glass to get to that induction center, to put on the uniform and defend my people.
And he's like, I would have walked over glass to get to the recruitment center to serve my country. I'm like, yes, that's what we need.
He's an incredible hero, and he's actually started something which hasn't happened before, at least in the UK academia. He started a counter protest or a counter movement pro academic freedoms. And he's got a lot of
I don't know his name off the top of my head, but
he's got a lot of people sign on to this academic freedoms thing that he's doing. He's not on his own completely. He was great. He did a fantastic interview. I saw that interview. He's definitely a worthy hero. My hero, to talk a little bit to the other side of what Emily's talking about, is Ted Cruz. Because if there's anybody in the Republican Party today, apart from our wonderful Mike Huckabee that we love, but he's the ambassador. He's not in the Republican Party as an elected official at the moment. But if there's one person that's still holding the fort for sanity against the crazy woke right, is Ted Cruz. He was harassed and bullied by Tucker Carlson and his program, trying to push him into a corner about Israel. And I thought he did very well. And now he's at the RJC, the Republican Jewish Coalition conference this week, basically saying, we have a problem, but the sane people are with you. And so he is getting, I know from inside sources, that he's getting a lot of hate online and offline. He's really facing a barrage of hatred because of his stance towards Israel, but he's holding strong. So, Senator Ted Cruz, God bless you for standing strong with your values and standing strong with Israel and the values of freedom. Thank you so much.
Amen.
And so, ladies, with that, we wrap up our show. And by the time next week comes along, we will know what the fate of New York will be. And please God, the pollsters got it wrong yet again. And please God, we'll get all of our murdered hostages home for burial, for a dignified burial from their families. And maybe we can hope that the world turns around for the better by the time we get back home next week.
Amen.
Thank you for watching.